well leaks and water leaks and stuff, I've just been using this Loctite 518 much as I can. Pretty much eliminated having to buy gaskets. I don't get too gooby with it because you still can, like silicone, you can squeeze it to the inside,
Yeah, get everywhere.
and that can always cause problems because it'll flake or whatever if you got it. Most of the time it rolls up pretty tight against it, but you can't overuse it, basically thinking that you got some big gap. Unless you actually know you got a big gap. Well, so anyhow, that's heating and radiator, heater core, most of your problems. Keeping water in it is the biggest problem. If you keep your water in it, then you don't have as much problem as you might think.
That little bypass tube that goes from the.
Not
Oh my God,
necessary.
that thing was horrible. I had it blow on the highway.
Yeah, well,
Those are hard to replace.
that used to be the job down at BMC. Somebody came in with one of those blown things when I was working down there, was to have to replace it. One guy had it down to the point where he could get it pinched just right and actually not even unbolt the head, which would have been, really cool.
Yeah.
Other than that, trying to unbolt the head basically just to be able to get that little hose in there. And it's only because the radiator is so difficult to get out of it, basically. That's really what I was explaining to you about taking that shroud out of there, is you could actually, once you do that, you can actually unbolt the radiator from the bottom where it hooks to the motor mount and pull the bolts out of the top and actually slip it up past your fan.
Yeah.
So you can actually get it out of there, because other than that, if you can't do that, you can't get the lower radiator hose on very easily. It's a very troubling job trying to get the clamp undone and the hose back on and the clamp back on, and so buy good hoses for the bottom end, that's for sure. Silicone hoses, as far as I'm concerned, has probably been about the best one that I've ever seen come along for a Mini. Even though they might be an arm and a leg, they could probably save you a lot of grief. Because that's been one spot where the hose hooks up from the heater to the lower radiator hose that's been a bad spot for a long time.
Where do you buy those hoses? The silicone?
I usually buy them at 7 Enterprises. They got a kit that comes along with heater hoses and upper and lower radiator hose that you can just buy and install on your car.
Lord, you were talking about that little water pump bypass hose. So what do?
Well, at least take some JB weld after cleaning it out well and weld it up with some JB weld. Or actually take those out of there and put plugs in them, or buy a water pump that doesn't have a hole even in it yet.
And similarly on the head.
Some of the later heads don't even have a hole up there.
Yeah.
They, so basically they just eliminated a bit. For having a bypass, you can really have a lot of problems with a little hose. I used to take real hose, instead of that squeaky, that accordion-looking hose that BMC. I used to take, real heater hose and actually make my own hoses before I just started eliminating them, because
That's what I ended up doing, is just changing that out. I called the guys at 7 and they said the best thing to do is just don't use the one that's supposed to be there, and just get some heavy duty heater hose and put it in there.
Oh, one other thing about heaters. If you want your heater to work better in the wintertime, because that's when you're using it, change it to 195 degree thermostat.
There you go.
That's what I actually, in my most of my cars, I actually run 195 degree thermostat all year long. I figure it's going to If it's running good, it'll maintain it even in the summertime, and I've never had, as long as I have a good radiator and I didn't have any leaks or whatever, head gasket leaks or whatever, 195 degree thermostats never bothered me here. I like the plastic fans. The early fans, they didn't bend very well, so sometimes you couldn't get your radiator out past them as easy. So they seem to be a lot easier on trying to remove and reinstall radiators if you really need to. But, well, I'll tell you, if you gotta do it on the highway, you better have planned on doing it or you'll be there for a while.
If you're
Long
gonna,
run.
if you're gonna drain your radiator, do you have to remove the hose, bottom hose?
Well, most of my radiators have actually always had a drain plug in the bottom of it, but new radiators, they don't think that that's necessary, I guess, so they don't seem to install them in there. I guess all you can do then is pull your hose. So I usually just pull it off the water pump basically, and then if I need to drain the rest, I do after I take it out. I take the radiator out. Well, anything else?
What about engine movement?
The what?
Like engine movement, like when you shift and stuff, like the engine moves around?
Well, that's always been a problem, ever since the very first 850. You know, the very first 850 didn't have a hell of a lot of hole on it in there, and had an occasion to actually break its right motor mount, and it would get pretty floppy in there. Their engine stabilizers had a great big rubber donut in the thing, and it was a real fight to actually keep the tailpipes on the things because the motors were moved around in them. And then a few people started putting more stabilizers on there, and in actuality now with later stabilizers with a rod change gear shift, seems like the motors are stuck in there pretty good. So if I had one that was moving around too much or whatever, I would probably go find one of those and hook it up to your car so that you could stabilize your motor, because other than that, the first thing you'll have is just tailpipe problems.
I've actually got 3 stabilizers and my engine's still moving around.
I don't know if it actually is necessary to have 3, but then again, my setup that I'm running right now is a 998 instead of a 1275. I've ran some of the 1275s, but they seem to be in there pretty good. Most of my cars that I use the rod change on are my race cars, and all my race car motors are bolted straight to the frame. Like this, even that one over there, I got bolted straight to the frame. I don't know, I guess it's supposed to make more noise, but I couldn't really tell on a race car they make so much noise in the first place. Well, I mean, you have all the straight cut gears and all that other stuff, and you're going down the road, and it's just, you know, that, and the motor is kind of gets up on its pipe or whatever, so it starts. You can kind of get it to the point where all the harmonics and stuff isn't too bad, but other than that, really noisy. So I couldn't really tell whether it's any worse or any better by just hooking it to the frame. But my motive on my race car is that it's such a pain in the ass to try and put those little bolts in from the inside of the subframe to the outside of the subframe with a piece of, even when you're good at it, basically with a pair of mechanical fingers. I figure you're almost lost. I mean, basically, it's just they didn't make it easy to line the damn things up. They obviously put the motors in the subframes before they shove them into the cars. You know what I mean? So you're trying to install a motor and you're trying to get that bolts in there. So basically, I made a setup so that I got my motor mounts so that the nuts are sticking out of the bottom of the frame, or some bolts are sticking out of the bottom of the frame. So all you got to do is reach in there and put a couple of nuts on the thing, and it's over with. So you got to put zippers on motors in race cars. Well, I mean, it's a Mini. I probably run those motors harder than anybody in the United States,
Oh, yeah.
basically. But I basically got into GT5 racing, and they changed the rules back in 2004 and put us in with all the 1800s, and we were kind of like fish out of water as far as minis are concerned. So taking a step up from a motor that was designed and dynoed at 151 horsepower, and trying to think you're going to get more horsepower out of it, all I can say is good luck. You know, there's where all your money goes. All your money goes in the last 10 horsepower. If you want to get 130 horsepower, it isn't too bad, but if you want to get 140 something or other, you better get out your money. The cubic dollars is the only thing that gets you there, and time basically, the time you spend doing it is enormous. The big secret to any power out of any motor, especially these motors, is having a good cylinder head. If you have the best cylinder head and you're a good driver, you'll probably win that day. That and having, working with the dynos and the airflow benches and stuff like that, it's almost everything to get any power out of the top end, is to have the best cylinder head out of one of these things, because that's your core. It's what holds you back from having horsepower. If you want horsepower out of one of these motors, you drop a KAD twin cam 4-valve head on it, and with the racing cams and set up, they're pulling like 230 horsepower or more out of them. We're lucky to get. We're lucky to think you can get to 140 something or other. Joe Hefferker probably builds some of the best motors, on the West Coast or whatever. And a good Hefferker motor was considered to be something like 143, and a really super duper one 146. You know, so that was really stretching it. I have one that's been done. Of course, dynos, they vary from one place to another, but one that we used for the 2004 National Championship was dynoed at 151, and it's actually just a 30 over motor. See, but from there we've been trying to pick up enough horsepower to be able to race with other cars, because they just didn't give us enough rules. So that's what all my development's been since 2004, is to be able to make a harder running motor, basically. So we've got it to the point where you can run them to 9 grand all day long and pull 140 something or other horsepower out of them. We kicked Parker Johnstone's butt last year too. It was good to see a Mini out there actually beating a good ex-Hefferker Sprite, because I never did think that a Sprite was faster than a Mini. Any day out there, if there's a Sprite on the track, we'll be shooting for them guys.